Shanann Watts and her two daughters, 3-year-old Celeste and 4-year-old Bella, vanished on Monday. Their startling disappearance triggering a statewide alert as police and the FBI focus on her home outside Denver, where she was last seen.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Watts the Obsession live stream and chat. And tonight we are going to be talking about the Watts case. And in fact, I've been working on some content on the Watts case quite a bit over the past couple of weeks. And Ultimatum Part 2 is going to be coming out this weekend. I know a lot of you have been waiting for it. It's going to be coming out tomorrow or Sunday, most likely tomorrow. And I did also just upload a video that is a compilation of some of the breaking news reports after Chris Watts was arrested, and it was learned the fates of Shanann, 15 weeks pregnant, Bella, and Celeste. They had been murdered by their husband and father, perhaps with the help of another, although that was not really said in the broadcast. And we get to see a chance to see the reactions of the friends and neighbors, acquaintances, reacting to this news. There's a lot of rare footage in there. A lot of you have watched it and really enjoyed it. So check that out after the live stream or this weekend if you haven't yet. So I just want to say hi to those of you who are here. So, hey, Justice Jane, welcome. Hey, Victoria, Susan Peterson, Shadow Milk Cookie. Oh, I'm so happy you're here too, Shadow Milk Cookie. What a great name. Molson Man, such a pleasure to have you here. Molson Man is a Watts the Obsession OG, and I'm just so happy to have you here. True crime author Kathleen McKenna-Hudson was in chat earlier. I don't know if she's going to come back, but she's a friend of Molson Man as well, and I know she'd be really happy to see you. Thank you for being here, Molson Man. It's a pleasure to have you. Hey, Pepper, welcome. Thank you for all you do. Hey, Maylee, how are you doing? And Amanda Hughes, I just put the membership link for you in chat there if you do want to join, and thank you for being here. Hey, Susan again, Justice Jane. I also saw Daniel Wiley. I got your email, Daniel, and I really appreciate everything you have to say. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a behavioral therapist now, and I was a special educator before that. So I understand exactly what you're talking about with the propaganda and education, and I will respond to you about that and also share the information that you send me. And thank you so much for sending it along. Let's see who else is here. I know Honey Bun is here. Thank you for gifting a membership. So kind of you, Honey Bun. And also thank you for the great logo that's sported up in the corner there. Loco Jazz Hands, welcome. How are you doing? Hey, Sherry, how's it going, my friend? Great to see you. I hope the girls are well. Tell them I said hello. And let's see who else is here. Cowboy RC. I know I saw McJay, and I'm going to come back down to current time. And again, welcome to all of you who are coming in. As Shanann Watts would say, don't mind me. I'm a bit of a mess. It's really humid out there. That's why I started so late today. I feel like I'm all greasy. It's really hot and humid here, which I'm not complaining about. Oh my God, I thought the ice was never going to melt here in upstate New York. But we had some crazy storms coming through. I'm not late because it was humid and don't mind me. But the internet was out for a while. It's been a problem over the past few days with internet and power. Hey, Dave BMX, how are you doing? Sarah Bowman, welcome. Hey, Nuck and Putz, nice to see you. Leslie Harris, welcome. Sherry, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. So kind of you, my friend. Thank you for all of your support and for being just a wonderful person. All right, guys. So tonight we're talking about, let's see, what did I title this video? Let's see. Chris Watts' confession wasn't verified and Nichol Kessinger was not investigated. Why? So these are big issues and or questions. Now, one of the reasons I'm talking about this tonight is because the Ultimatum 2 video is again going to be dropping this weekend. So be looking for that. Excuse me. That's just bothering me. It's just not quite right. Too much space above my head. Okay. And also, Molson Man, I don't know if you know this, but you know, our friend, true crime author, Kathleen McKenna-Hudson, who swore she was never going to talk about or write about the Watts case again, she came on here and talked about the case, and she's like, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this case. She has, we have uncovered some information that is not known to the public that does need to be known to the public. So she is in the process right now of writing a book that is scheduled to be published this summer on Cece's birthday, which is July 19th. So some of this information is kind of a precursor to all of that. Hey, Valerie, welcome. How are you doing? Hey, Nikki Hatfield, welcome. How are you? So glad that you got one of the memberships. I'm looking forward to that book too, Nuck and Front. You know, she's such an amazing true crime author, and it's going to be amazing. I know it's going to be in it, and you guys are definitely going to want to read it when it's time for the book to be published. Yeah, we will be giving some books away. We're going to be giving the first few books away here on the channel along with some merch. So look forward to that. And again, it's scheduled to be published at this time, July 17th, which is Cece Watt's birthday. Oh, poor Cece. And she sticks to her guidelines. So I imagine that'll really happen. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about this evening is, many of you know, if you're familiar with the case, and if you're not, we'll somehow kind of get you caught up or just follow along. It's all very interesting. Chris Watts made an agreement with a district attorney to plea. He made a plea deal on November 6th, 2018. Now I'm going to show you some videos, some content that I've made, and kind of put things together to create a storyline here in a different way than I presented before, and some new stuff too. So don't worry about committing this to memory, but just kind of get an idea. So they made a plea deal on November 6th. And I think the sentencing, it was a couple weeks later, maybe like the 19th of November, it was the 18th or 19th, I believe. But the important thing is that they made a plea deal on November 6th, okay? We know, if you've been following this case, you've probably heard CBI investigator Tammy Lee, one of the investigators that questioned Chris Watts, along with FBI's Graham Coder. Tammy Lee is the woman who gave him the polygraph examination. She said, when he pled, it stopped the clock. And that's kind of become this little like mantra or known kind of canned statement that pertains to this case. But my contention is that the investigation stopped long before the plea deal happened. The plea agreement was arrived at on November 6, 2018. One pivotal thing that I have discussed before, and we're going to look at that a little bit today in this live stream, is the way that Chris Watts' work truck was handled and the evidence that was in fact collected in his work truck during the investigation that was refused for analysis, for evaluation by CBI. There is actually an email authored to Dave Baumhover, the head detective from Frederick, Colorado, and that is dated on September 6th. So in my mind, that is the first piece of evidence that we have that the investigation had already stopped as early as September 6th. Now remember, this horrible tragedy that annihilated Chris Watts' family and took the lives of 15-week pregnant Shanann Watts, his wife, his 4-year-old daughter Bella Watts, and his 3-year-old daughter Celeste Watts happened on August 13th. So CBI's refusal to analyze the evidence from Chris Watts' work truck on September 6th was just a mere few weeks after this tragedy happened. And I think you'll agree that is when the clock really stopped. The first thing I want us to listen to, hey, Aunt Diane, welcome. How are you doing? Hey, Beanie Boomer, how's it going? Congratulations on getting the membership, Beanie Boomer. That's awesome. And let me see if I missed anyone else. If I missed you, I'm so sorry. Hey, Kai, welcome. How are you doing? I really don't want to miss saying hello to anybody. If I did miss you, please say hello back and I'll try to catch you. I'm so glad you guys are all here. Please, 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 please take a moment right now, hit the like, help get those notifications out. And it's all we ask for support of the channel. And I really appreciate it. Nuck and Fret says, my son is 2 months younger than Cece was. Oh, he's nearly to my neck in height now. Oh, so he's 2 months. If Cece were alive still, he would be 2 months younger. Oh, it's just so sad to think about her being the same age. I bet it is. Yeah, hey, Miss Match, how are you doing? Oh, Miss Match, thank you so much for the gift through PayPal too. I really appreciate that. That was so super kind of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Hey, Cindy Myers, how are you doing? Or Chad Myers. Gosh, I'm so sorry, Chad. Welcome. So glad you're here. I don't know how I read Cindy there. Yeah, when you have like a little one in your life or, some situation in your life that really lets you relate to that crime when it happened, like the age of a child, it really hits home, doesn't it? So the first thing we're going to listen to this evening is District Attorney Rourke's public press conference after Chris Watts was sentenced. I just want to hear what it is he has to say. We're just going to listen to a couple parts of it. It's probably about 10 minutes long in total. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring that into the stream right now. And welcome to all of you coming in. So glad you guys are here. Please come in, get comfortable, hit like, and thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who are not present in the courtroom today, I want to take a minute to summarize the nature of the proceedings at our status conference on People versus Christopher Watts this afternoon. Mr. Watts entered a plea of guilty to all 9 counts in the original complaint and information. Those counts include murder in the first degree after deliberation as to Shanann Watts, murder in the first degree as to Bella Watts, murder in the first degree as to Celeste Watts, unlawful termination of a pregnancy as it relates to Nico Watts, and 3 counts of unlawful tampering with a deceased human body. There was a sentencing agreement that calls for the defendant to be sentenced to the Department of Corrections for the remainder of his natural life as to counts 1, 2, and 3. All of those sentences will run consecutively to one another. There's also an agreement that whatever sentence the court imposes as to count 6 will also run consecutively to counts 1 through 3. The remainder of the sentencing will be left to the discretion of the court. That sentencing will occur November 19th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The final piece of the sentencing agreement calls for the district attorney's office, myself, to agree that as a result of his plea of guilty, that he will not face the death penalty. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions about that, so let me address that right up front. Present here in the room with us today is Frank Rourke, Sandra Rourke, and Frank Rourke Jr., Shanann's brother, mom and dad. Mr. Wren and I flew out to North Carolina about 3 weeks ago and spent quite a bit of time with the Rourke family talking about the state of the death penalty in Colorado, the realities of the death penalty. We explained to them the extraordinary delays that currently exist in the state of Colorado as the result of, in part, the actions of our current governor. We discussed the fact that an individual by the name of Nathan Dunlap was convicted and sentenced to death in 1996 and is still alive today. We discussed all of the possible consequences, delays, penalties, timeframes, and I hope I'm saying this accurately. I know they'll correct me if I am wrong, but they were very strongly in favor of a resolution in this case short of the death penalty. That, to me, was the most important consideration in deciding how to proceed with this case. However, as they know, after we had those
guys, just give me a minute, just 1 second, sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I still have my video editor open, which is a problem. So give me a second to close it. But I needed to make a comment here at that point. Let's see. Just let me close this up here. Save. So he says that, as you just heard, that Shanann Watts' family is overwhelmingly in favor of Chris not facing the death penalty, as in they completely do not want him to face the death penalty. They are against it. The way that he just stated it, I can play it again if you need me to. I think that makes it clear that that was what he was stating. What is interesting is that shortly after Chris Watts was sentenced, he did make a statement saying, it might even be in this press conference. I didn't listen to the whole thing today because I have heard it a few times. What he specifically says in each one, I don't have memorized to heart, but I know the general gist, that it was Sandy Watts who, was against the death penalty. And she said, I know he says in the sentencing that he decided to take the lives of her family, and she does not want to have that same decision in her hands regarding his life, something to that effect. Well, what is interesting is that he is so emphatic in this press conference that the family, the whole family, meaning Frank Sr. and Sandy, were against the death penalty. But when we listened to what he had to say in his wife's podcast, The Survivor's Guide to True Crime, he got the roles of Sandy and Frank Rourke flip-flopped and said that it was Sandy who wanted the death penalty and it was Frank who was opposed to it. And he talks a bit at length about that. So he can't even get his facts straight. I don't think that it was true in any regard that they were both so sternly opposed to the death penalty. In fact, when they found out what really happened, really with air quotes, after Chris Watts' jailhouse confession in February of 2019, They said if they knew what Bella had experienced and the trauma that she had gone through, then they would have thought differently about the consequence of going for the death penalty or not. So this is just one of District Attorney Rourke's many lies that he tells the public so unashamedly that you just heard right here. I'm going to bring this back in.
Meetings with all of the law enforcement partners you see standing up here today, with the supervisors in my office, in consultation with other district attorneys around the state, and to a person, the advice and suggestions that I was given was, you do what the victim's family wants you to do in this case.
Yeah.
I don't know how I could have sat in Sandy's kitchen and asked her to commit the next 25 years of her life to the criminal justice system without any assurances that that sentence, if ever imposed, or excuse me, if ever obtained, would ever actually be imposed.
And as this live stream goes on, I'm going to show you, I'm going to provide proof to you that what he is saying right here is bullshit.
I want to take an opportunity to thank the law enforcement partners who are standing up here and those who are not up here. This investigation, this prosecution was exactly what local, state, and federal cooperation should look like. The Frederick Police Department, the Greeley Police Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, all worked in conjunction, with one another to present to our office a case that could give this resolution and hopefully this closure to Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nicho's family. Understand that this is not over. As I said, we have a sentencing hearing in a couple of weeks. I'm going to give Director John Camper from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation an opportunity to say a few words here in a couple of minutes. But understand that at this point, I still can't answer questions about the facts surrounding the investigation because at least at this point, the judge has not formally accepted those guilty pleas and imposed sentence. After that sentencing hearing, we will have an opportunity to answer the questions that I know many in the media, many in the public have had from the day this investigation started. But before we answer any questions, I want to invite up Director John Camper.
Thanks, Mr. Rourke. I think it goes without saying when something so horrible happens, it's really not possible to be particularly celebratory. But that said, I think all of us are gratified at the outcome here, primarily for Shanann's family, but also the many investigators and other professionals, as Mr. Rourke said, some who are represented here and many who are not, who have devoted so much time, energy, and frankly, emotion into this tragic case. Really all everyone wanted throughout was justice for Shanann and Bella and Celeste, and we're certainly pleased that this seems to be the outcome. So on behalf of the CBI and I think the other organizations and many who were involved in this, our deepest condolences to the Ruziks and their family and friends. Thank you.
I'll be happy to answer questions, but I will be the first to tell you that I truly appreciate the Ruziks being present, not only in the state of Colorado, but in this room. I can tell you on behalf of them, they are not prepared, nor do they want to answer questions at this point. And I hope you all will respect that. I will try to answer questions as best I can on their behalf, at least today. So what questions can I answer for you all?
Could the death penalty ever be imposed in the state of Colorado?
I don't know. We have a governor in office right now who, understandably, we have an election going on today. He is term limited. We have a governor who has refused to make a decision as it relates to Nathan Dunlap. I explained that to the Ruzick family, and obviously that gives them some pause when I'm asking them to endure a 4 or 5 year delay prior to a trial, and many more years after that of appeals and post-conviction hearings before that sentence could ever possibly be imposed. So when the question was asked of me by their family, what is the realistic outcome of this particular case as it relates to the death penalty, the best I could tell them is I don't know.
You said that they requested that you not seek the death penalty. How did that affect your process?
I went through the same process I would have had their answer been different. I had in my mind from the day this occurred, the steps in the process that I felt like were due diligence in order to come to this decision. I don't think any elected district attorney ever wants to have to make a decision about whether or not to seek the death penalty as it relates to an individual. But when I have a family who has been so incredibly supportive and so incredibly firm in their belief that the death penalty not be sought, I don't know how I would have said to them, I'm going to do it anyway.
Lines.
How early into the process was that decision made?
The decision was made about 4 days ago.
How was the family react when told them about this decision?
I think there were a lot of emotions that went through their mind. And again, they're going to throw something at me if I say something inappropriate. I think that there was a combination of relief, extraordinary sadness that we ever had to have that conversation in the first place. And I can only say that I hope there is a sense of closure. I know that that will never be fully realized because obviously the tragedy that sits before us today is the loss of 4 beautiful lives. And no matter what happens today, no matter what happens at a sentencing hearing down the road, we can't get them back. Sandy said it very, very poignantly to me. She said, he made the choice to take those lives. I do not want to be in a position of making the choice to take his. And so that's about as firmly as she could have said it to me. And that was very compelling to all of us as we were talking about how to proceed on this case.
Chris Watts first said Shanann actually killed the 2 little girls. What was his story when he changed his mind? And did they, were they killed before Shanann got home?
Carol, I don't know the answer to that question. We talked a lot about whether we would require him to come forward and give us what we believe to be a complete, accurate, and truthful statement. I think all of those who were involved never truly believed that he would give us an accurate statement. What I can tell you most affirmatively today by what happened in the courtroom is the spotlight that he tried to shine on Shanann falsely, incorrectly, and frankly, a flat out lie has been corrected. The spotlight shines directly where it belongs, on him.
What's the status of the autopsy?
Those are still sealed at this point. I need to have a conversation with the coroner's office, with Shanann's family, and the county attorney representing the coroner's office about at what point in time those will become a public record. We are not assuming that the sentencing hearing goes the way we believe that it will and goes forward. We will not be asking those be kept sealed any longer after the sentencing hearing.
When did discussions with the defense begin about the plea?
Several weeks ago. I can't tell you the exact date, but it's been several weeks in the making. We had very preliminary discussions prior to visiting the Rourke in North Carolina.
Was it just a matter of the death penalty to get a guilty plea?
You'd have to ask them. All I can tell you is the discussions that we had with them, and frankly, the discussions that Mr. Wren and I had with the Rourke family made it very clear that there was going to be no further concession. I didn't feel like this was a case where it was appropriate to agree to dismiss some counts in exchange for a plea of guilty to others, because we charged him with what we truly believed he had done at the time we filed that complaint. And I was not willing to entertain any further concessions above and beyond removing the death penalty from consideration.
During your investigation, did you ever get a motive from Chris Watts?
Ask me again in 2.5 weeks or the day after the day of sentencing. I'll be happy to answer that question. At this point, that's getting a little bit too far into the investigation, at least as we sit right now. We believe that we have a partial motive. I'm not sure if it's the entirety of the motive, but I'll be happy to comment on that following the sentencing.
Well, Christopher Watts,
You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Whether or not he's in solitary confinement where he serves his time, whether it be in what DOC facility in the state of Colorado, or if he's one who's transferred to another state, is left to the discretion of the executive director of the Department of Corrections. I don't know. Yes.
Can you talk about the importance of that?
Sure.
For yourself, the law enforcement,
Absolutely. I think that the plea of guilty to each of those counts, naming those individual victims, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, was an important consideration, but also he deserves a life sentence for each and every act on top of one another. In practicality, it doesn't make a difference in terms of how long he's ultimately going to serve. But what he needs to understand is he will be serving 3 consecutive life sentences plus a sentence for Nico Watts because of the acts that he committed against all 4 of them. It was important that each of those beautiful human beings be reflected in the ultimate sentence that will be imposed.
does he remain in solitary confinement in the jail?
I don't know what the status of him being held in the jail is. I would expect, I'm speculating or surmising that that's probably something the sheriff would look into, or will do pending sentencing, but I don't know where he sits today.
What was the security importance of the garment that he was brought in?
I don't know. I presume that it was for his own protection. From whom, I don't know. I think that that's a standard safety measure that the sheriff will take in very high-profile cases. I appreciate the sheriff's diligence in protecting him as well as everybody else who's in the courtroom.
Have you ever had a case like this resolved so soon into the investigation?
No.
You've never had a case like this?
No.
Is that due to the overwhelming amount of evidence in some ways that you think that you had in this case?
I don't know the reason why they approached us initially. I don't know what their thought process was in terms of making this offer to us that was at least compelling enough that we wanted to get on a plane and fly out and see the Rourke family in person. This was not a conversation we were going to have over the telephone or over Skype. But what caused them to come to us in the first place, I don't know. I don't know what it was that pushed them over the tipping point, so to speak.
Did they come with a plea agreement that was similar to what was on today?
Initially, no.
Okay.
Recently, yes.
Okay.
As of a couple of days ago, yes.
Two separate
Yes.
offers?
Yes.
How does this make you feel?
Sick, saddened. As Director Camper said, no one wins today. I never wanted to have to stand up and have a press conference like this. I'm saddened that I had to meet the Rourke family under these circumstances. It's been a pleasure working with them and meeting them and knowing them.
Okay,
But,
guys, just one second here
as the
again.
director
But not many. It's pretty short. There's like 10 or 12, and there's like a few from those days, but most of it is. Hi. Hello.
Nikki.
This is
Tammy.
Tammy.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm Stacy Galbraith.
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
All right.
Getting through it?
Trying.
Yeah. Did you get some therapy figured out?
I'm waiting for you guys to get back to me on that, but I'm trying.
So Weld County's just, I had to write a letter yesterday for Weld County to approve, to pay for her treatment.
Oh.
And then it's got to go through a board because it's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
Since she's not an eyewitness.
Right.
But it sounded like there was not going to be any opposition to it. It's just a process.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you go through the text messages, Tammy and probably Stacy will be there.
Okay.
So you guys know each other. Or if they reach out to you, you know that they're not the media.
Yeah. Can you guys give me your cards?
Yeah.
I grab you one.
Okay. I just,
Thank
now
you.
with this new phone, it's like I got so many numbers that I'm sure.
Kevin Kobach acknowledges there that Nichol Kessinger's status as a witness is a little unusual, he says, because she's not an eyewitness. What is more unusual is her status as a protected witness, and her status as a protected witness that was granted by the FBI starting on the first day that she spoke with them. And here is what District Attorney Rourke had to say about Nichol Kessinger first speaking with the authorities. And then I'm going to tell you how it really went down.
The intense media coverage leads to an unexpected tip.
Law enforcement got a phone call from a woman named Nichol Kessinger. She said that she had information and was offering to be interviewed as part of this investigation to offer up to investigators what she knew.
As you're going to see later on in this video, when we look at some of Nichol Kessinger's mind-blowing statements from her final interview with law enforcement on August 26, 2018, Nichol Kessinger tends to not really care about anyone else, not a goddamn person in the world other than herself. So I don't believe that Nichol Kessinger started singing like a bird out of the kindness of her heart, wanting to help justice, or because she cared about what happened to Shanann, certainly not, or Bella, or Celeste. So why is it Nichol Kessinger ended up speaking to law enforcement, to the FBI on that first day, on the 15th, 2 days after the murder, on that very same day that she was declared by the FBI a protected witness? Why did she talk to them? Check this out from the Discovery. It should be noted that approximately 3 hours before the polygraph was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m., I received a phone call from Anadarko Regional Security Manager Tony Husky. Husky advised me he had reviewed Chris's computer, and it was possible Chris had started up a relationship with an Anadarko contracted employee. He had located emails between Chris and the contracted employee, Nichol or Nikki Kessinger. So we know that law enforcement knew about the affair at 5 a.m. on August 15th, 3 hours before the polygraph exam was about to start. And it was not until a couple hours later that Nichol Kessinger called law enforcement. If Anadarko is like any other corporation in America, then if something like this were to happen and they were to be implicating their employee in doing anything wrong, whether it be from an affair or having something to do with such an egregious crime, they would need to let that employee know immediately. So was it the fact that Tony Husky caught on to the affair between Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger via the emails that he located that triggered Anadarko to contact Nichol Kessinger about it, that triggered Nichol Kessinger to finally go to law enforcement? I think that is more likely the case than Nichol going to law enforcement on her own volition because she has a strong conscience. Let's take a listen and go a little further.
What did that cause you to do with your phone, though?
Oh, what, when I deleted those?
Yeah.
I was just kind of grossed out by him, to be honest with you. I was just like, I don't know what's going on right now, that you just lied to me, and I don't want to see this come over my phone anymore. So I removed it.
So you already said, but you removed text messages?
I deleted all of his stuff because he lied to me. I mean, that's what it was. It was the hurt that made me delete it. And then it was the lie that made me start questioning everything else he'd been telling me for the last few days.
And that's when you decided to come forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you've heard all these lies that Nichol Kessinger has told before, don't you worry, because we're just getting warmed up.
I am so out of breath.
Before we get into the stunning admissions and statements that she made in her fifth and final interview with law enforcement on August 28th, 2018, let's just briefly recall the basis of what she said to the FBI on that very first day when she met with them, the first of her 5 interviews. Remember, it was on that very same day, on August 15th, before the first of her 5 interviews ended, that the FBI decided that Nichol Kessinger will be a protected witness.
I met Chris at work, and we kind of talked in passing and then started to get to know each other. We started hanging out pretty frequently around, I want to say like the last week of June, somewhere around there. He informed me that he did have 2 kids, and he also told me that he was currently in the process of a separation from his wife. As far as I knew, that was becoming pretty finalized.
Now, one of the fundamental problems is that when Nichol Kessinger started dating Chris Watts, divorce was not on the horizon whatsoever for Shanann and Chris. Nobody was planning it. It had not been discussed, but divorce was not going to be in their future at all. I think even when Chris Watts started dating Nichol Kessinger, divorce was not in his future with his marriage to his wife, Shanann. Well, we know at least that is true because in the only email correspondence between Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger, which all happened on June 12th, 2018, Nichol Kessinger says this to Chris Watts.
I'm looking for someone to build a beautiful life with. Seems so simple, but so unrealistic sometimes. Build something similar to what you have done with your wife and those cute little girls. I do believe in karma, so out of respect for myself, you, and your family, I think it's best if we keep that friendship at work.
It's only at a certain point during that relationship, 6 weeks as they tell it, did the idea of divorce become a reality. That fundamental lie that Nichol Kessinger told law enforcement from right off the bat is a lie that she had to contend with throughout all of the 5 hours upon hours of interviews with law enforcement all throughout. And I hope she's still contending with it today in her conscience. After all, as I know that y'all know, this was an absolutely horrific truth from anybody who could provide a truth that might allow investigators, the families of the victims, and the world to better understand this heinous crime.
My name is Michael J. Rourke. I'm the district attorney here in Weld County, Colorado. I was the lead prosecutor on the Christopher Watts case.
And if you truly want complete justice for the victims of this case, then right here, my friend, is one of our biggest problems. And although District Attorney Rourke might not lie as much as Nichol Kessinger as it relates to this case, in fact, he certainly doesn't. I mean, she's got the record hands down on that. He does tell lies to the public, to the people that he's supposed to be serving, and the people around the world who are terrorized by this case. He tells blatant lies about what he knows about Nichol Kessinger's part in this crime, about what she knew, about what perhaps she did. Clearly, this was an attempt to just keep everyone happy so he could get his conviction, but not try or even begin to actually investigate the case, to do the work. But maybe there were also more sinister reasons for his lies.
My name is Michael J. Rourke. I'm the district attorney here in Weld County, Colorado. I was the lead prosecutor on the Christopher Watts case. Nichol Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
Let's take a quick look at what it is we know that District Attorney Rourke knows about Nichol Kessinger and her role in the investigation. and her role in Chris Watts' life during the time that was being investigated, which was prior to and contemporaneous to the murders of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico.
The girlfriend you referenced in court, can you give us a better idea of her role in the investigation, how forthcoming she was, and how she helped?
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part, she was forthcoming in the course of those investigations.
What did that cause you to do with your phone, though?
Oh, what? When I deleted those? I was just kind of grossed out by him, to be honest with you. I was just like, I don't know what's going on right now, but you just lied to me, and I don't want to see this come over my phone anymore. So I removed it.
So you already said, but you removed text messages?
I deleted all of his stuff because he lied to me. I mean, that's what it was. It was the hurt that made me delete it. And then it was the lie that made me start questioning everything else he'd been telling me for the last few days.
And that's when you decided to come forward?
Yes.
Okay. So just for context,
yes.
When people delete stuff off phones, usually we go,
No, it wasn't
that's why I
malicious
wanted,
at all. It wasn't malicious at all. He lied to me. It just hurt. Like, I had never felt like he'd ever lied to me before. And it was a big lie. I mean, telling somebody that you're in the midst of a divorce and then you have a wife that has a 15-week-old baby on the way is a huge, huge thing. And I was very taken back, and it was hurt. And so at that point, I deleted it. I had a few more quick things to say to him, and then I just got rid of him. That's literally what I did. I just cut him out of my life. It would have honestly been like a bad breakup kind of thing. Like, if none of this other stuff would have happened, that's what it would have been. That would have been the end of it.
The information was not destroyed because there was anything in there that would be harmful to you or potentially to Chris at this point, but harmful to you in particular. That's not why you did it.
No.
You did it out of, excuse my language, this guy's an asshole, so I'm getting rid of him, and I'm getting this stuff off my phone.
That was like me kicking him out of my life.
Okay.
And then, like I said, and then realizing that he lied, that was when I was like, okay, maybe his family is in danger and they're not coming back and they're not staying with a friend.
Okay, so I've spoken about this in a number of other videos, so I don't want to belabor the point, although it is a critical point as we are looking at the career of District Attorney Rourke, his actions as it is concerned with the Chris Watts case and the murders of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico, and also as far as the way that he characterizes Miss Nichol Kessinger. He uses interesting words here, such as hampers the investigation, saying rather than, I don't know, she obstructs the investigation, which is a felony in Colorado, as is destruction of evidence, which we all know is a crime that Nichol Kessinger committed, as she even says so herself. It's important to know that the entire reason Nichol Kessinger gave law enforcement for deleting Chris Watts' messages and anything else having to do with him off of her phone is a complete lie. The reason that she gives them is that she did not know that Chris Watts' wife, Shanann, was pregnant. And it wasn't until Tuesday morning, the day after the murders, when she was reading the newspaper, did she find that out. I have proven time and time again on this channel, as have other people, that the fact that Nichol Kessinger did not know Shanann was pregnant prior to that Tuesday, the day after the murders, is a complete and unequivocal lie. It's just as important to know that District Attorney Rourke also must have known that the reason Nichol Kessinger gave law enforcement for deleting all of Chris Watts' information off of her phone, including call records and text messages, he also knows that's total BS, total lie. Through the course of the investigation, as it outlines in the discovery, there are several times during the time period while Nichol Kessinger was dating Chris Watts, before and after that Nichol Kessinger Googled the name Shanann Watts, which would have brought her to Shanann Watts' Facebook page, where Shanann Watts, during the course of her pregnancy, talked many, many, many times about how excited she was to be pregnant and posted about the baby Watts to be in her belly at that moment. And District Attorney Rourke saw all of that. What else did District Attorney Rourke know about Nichol Kessinger as it relates to this case? Well, District Attorney Rourke knew about the information contained within Investigator Prill's summary in the discovery that precedes the official discovery timeline of the phone data extraction. Omitting some important things, but we'll talk about that later. It says, during my review of the data extracted from the phones belonging to Chris Watts, Shanann Watts, and Nichol Kessinger, certain information was learned. Agent Darren Ford conducted logical extractions of the data from the phones. In conversations with Ford, he advised that the Northern Colorado Forensic Laboratory does not possess technology to perform the physical data extractions from Apple devices. Thus, I discovered the extracted data is not inclusive of all data stored amongst the assorted applications within a given device, nor does activity involving those applications necessarily reflect in the data extracted. For example, Watts had a secret calculator application uploaded to his phone. This application, by all appearances, is an operable calculator, but when users enter a secret passcode, the application reveals its true purpose: a concealed storage device for photographs, videos, contacts, even a private browser. In mid-July 2018, Watts began transferring images from his camera application into the secret application. This activity is not reflected with line. Locating those transferred images proved challenging as it was predicated on mere curiosity. I searched through the images stored within the data files featured in the Celebrate report. Locating an image not highlighted in the timeline, I reviewed the path within the file information and noticed it included the words secret calculator. Using the find feature, I searched the 12,000 images stored in the phone's memory using the keyword secret calculator. I located a vast collection of images otherwise undetected during my review that are stored within this application. In the near future, a follow-up warrant will be sought. This is important, to manually search through this phone and access the secret calculator. That search will include any additional photographs or videos, any browser activity, and information related to this installation date. The last sentence in this report says, investigation continues. Please forward to the district attorney's office. End of report. Something important to understand about this report by Detective Michael Prill is that it is dated at 3:08 on 10/30/2018 or October 30th, 2018. So where was the next place this report was going to go? To the district attorney's office and you better believe straight away. The date that Chris Watts pled guilty to the murders of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and some additional charges with aggravating circumstances, and to handle the crime in the death of baby Nico, who was not yet born, that date was November 6th, 8 days after this report was generated. Now, contained in this report generated by Detective Michael Prill, there are some important things. There is the search for Shanann Watts that heads off that timeline that certainly would have stood out boldly to District Attorney Rourke from September 1st, 2017. Well before District Attorney is aware of this, Nichol or Chris Watts claimed that they ever had met, well before that time. He also would have read all of the lines, the timeline event entries that noted the various searches during the relationship span of Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger, where she had Googled Shanann's name. And he would have learned very quickly that when doing so, you would have gone to Shanann's Facebook page, where she would have spoken excitedly and proudly about her family and about her baby, who is still inside her belly, that she was so super excited for. Baby Watts, as she called little Nico on her Facebook posts. District Attorney Rourke also would have known, because he just read it in the report, that Michael Prill anticipated on generating more search warrants to more completely search the phones for things that are hidden underneath the surface, like this hidden calculator app that he explained, took some effort to really find it, to get in there, to find the contents of it, because, well, it's supposed to be secret. And I guess for even people who know how to extract information from a phone, it still remained pretty secret if it was not for Michael Prill's commitment to finding the truth. District Attorney Rourke would have had a very clear understanding that between all of the messages and information that was deleted by Nichol Kessinger and all of the information that we now know was hidden into the depths of the cell phone of at least Chris Watts and possibly Nichol Kessinger as well, that what he did know about Nichol Kessinger was pretty damn incriminating. And what he didn't know, well, oh my gosh, there was a whole lot he didn't know. And the nature of that information must have been something interesting, because she and he, Nichol and Chris, have been trying so damn hard to conceal it.
Nichol Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
Oh yeah, is that true, District Attorney Rourke? She has information that could just be described as being a bombshell. What exactly could that possibly be? We know that she was not an eyewitness, because we overhear that being said during one of her interviews when there is talk between the agents from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Take a listen.
Yeah,
Tammy,
nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm Stacey Galbraith. Nice to meet you. How are you doing? All right. Getting through it? Trying. Yeah.
Stressing out.
Stressing out. Yeah, you look stressed out. Did you get some therapy figured out?
I'm waiting for the goods to get back to me on that, but I'm trying.
Your help. Yeah. Does Hazel need to?
Yeah, we're going to see if Hazel comes in. So Weld County's I had to write a letter yesterday for Weld County to approve, to pay for her treatment.
Oh.
And then it's got to go through a board, because it's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
Since she's not an eyewitness.
Right.
But it sounded like there was not going to be any opposition to it. It's just a process.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you go through the text messages, Tammy and probably Stacey will be there.
Okay.
So you guys know each other.
Okay.
Or if they reach out to you, you know that they're not the media.
Yeah. Can you guys give me your cards?
Yeah.
I got everyone.
Okay.
Thank
now
you.
with this new phone, it's like I got so many numbers that I'm
who had an affair with Chris Watts, told our partners at the Denver Post that she hardly knew anything about Shanann and that she had only recently started a relationship with Chris. Well, there's now evidence to suggest that she knew about Shanann almost a year before the murders.
Contact 7 investigates Jace Larson here in the studio with that part of this grim story. Jace?
Yeah, guys, police interviewed Nichol Kessinger, the other woman. She came forward to police about the same time that Watts' employer, Anna Darko, had found emails indicating a relationship between the two. This is Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts on a secret trip together the month before he killed his family. The two took pictures and videos during their secret time together in July. Nichol later talked to police.
And then one day he told me that he had 2 kids. I was like, that's pretty cool. And started telling me about his kids.
That sounded like a sarcastic comment.
No, I thought it was kind of cute. I was like, oh, he's a dad. It was like right around Father's Day too.
She learned he was married, even though she says he didn't wear a wedding ring.
The thing is he was never hostile. It was never anything aggressive. Like even when he spoke of his wife and the fact that they were separating, it was never like ill. It was still very kind. It was just like, this is not working.
The other woman claims she met Watts in June. She says she thought Watts was at the end of his divorce proceedings.
I didn't know his significant other's name for a while. And then I think he told me his kids' names pretty quick.
But police had found her internet searches from the year before. Kessinger searched the name Shanann Watts in September of 2017.
Did he ever tell you that he loved you?
Yes, he did.
Did you ever tell him the same?
A couple times.
By this June, Watts was hiding photos in a phone app that looked like a calculator.
I mean, he just told me, he's like, we're house broke all the time. I was just like, that's unfortunate. And I asked him, I was like, do you have 401k? And he was like, yeah. And I mean, the reason I ask him this is because if I get into a relationship with somebody, I want to know like what kind of baggage that they have. I think that's important.
Kessinger says even looking back now, knowing she says that he lied to her, she didn't see all of this coming.
To this day, even after everything that I found out, I still look back at that and I don't see any red lights with the way that he spoke of his family.
Nichol Kessinger did cooperate with police. She says she went to them when she started suspecting that Watts was behind his family's disappearance.
Jace Larson tonight. Jace, thank you. Exclusive new interview. The woman who had an affair with a killer is speaking out just days before he's sentenced to life in prison. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Shannon Ogden.
And I'm Ann Trujillo, and she's talking about her romantic life with Christopher Watts, even up to the moments he confessed.
Denver 7's Jace Larson's in the studio tonight with the tales of the interview given to our news partner, the Denver Post.
Yeah, that's right. Her name is Nichol Kessinger, and this is what she looks like. She is a woman who worked in the oil business and in the same office building as Christopher Watts. For the first time tonight, Nichol Kessinger is agreeing to show her face and tell her side of the story. Kessinger says Watts first saw her in the break room, and then in mid-June, he came to her office to introduce himself. She said when he spoke to me, he was very soft-spoken. He appeared to be a good listener. Kessinger says Watts deceived her, though, never wearing a wedding ring and lying, saying he was in the final stages of a divorce. Then the next month, in July, she says they started dating, and they started seeing each other 4 or 5 times a week. He even asked her to help find an apartment, claiming he and his girls needed one after the divorce was final. He made me believe that he was doing all of the things that a rational man and a good father would do, she said. In an interview with Denver 7, Watts' parents said they had an inkling that their son was having an affair while his wife Shanann was visiting her family on the East Coast.
I think there may have been an emotional relationship prior to her leaving to come to North Carolina, and it may have progressed into something else when she was gone. I don't know anything about it. Chris didn't talk to us a lot about any of his personal life. He didn't, but you could see it. You could see it when you went down, when you went to visit.
When his family went missing and it was everywhere on the news, Kessinger says she realized he'd been lying to her, and she called the Weld County Sheriff's Office the day he was arrested. She's one of the people listed on the prosecution's witness list. I just wanted to help, she said. With a pregnant woman and 2 children missing, I was going to do anything that I could. Watts has reached a plea deal admitting that he's murdered his family, and he's set to be sentenced to life in prison on Monday. And if you're hoping that she knows why Watts did it, she says, I don't think there is a logical explanation. We mentioned that she spoke to our partners at the Denver Post. Tonight we have an early look at what the front page of tomorrow's Denver Post is going to look like. This story is front and center. You can read more of this interview. We have a link to this story posted at the
It's all really interesting, isn't it? I mean, all of the lies that District Attorney Rourke knew that Nichol Kessinger told the public, yet he has a nerve to admonish the public for asking questions, for asking legitimate questions, saying it's not a witch hunt, that anybody who is inquiring about Nichol Kessinger is on a witch hunt, implying that you're a horrible person. You're on a witch hunt. You're trying to go after somebody who hasn't done anything wrong. This is not a witch hunt. How dare he say that? How dare he?
Some tend to believe, District Attorney Rourke, that the reason that you did not want anyone to know anything more about Nichol Kessinger, why you told the public who wanted to understand more about her role in everything, that this is not a witch hunt, leave me alone, and all the other things that he has said in the past about this case. Maybe the reason why you wanted to rush this case to a plea and make sure that that search warrant that Detective Michael Prill indicated in his summary of the phone extraction data, that search warrant that should be sought after to look further into the phone. You, District Attorney Rourke, wanted to make sure that search warrant was never obtained or executed. And we have to wonder why that is. We have to wonder why that is. And it might be that, well, there's a lot of reasons that could have caused him to behave in the despicable way he behaved as it relates to this case. But could it be that he didn't think that he was going to have enough to convict Chris Watts on the charges he needed to convict him on, not because he wasn't guilty? And let it be known that this channel absolutely believes that Chris Watts is where he belongs right now. Did he think he couldn't prosecute the case, not because Chris Watts isn't guilty, but because the investigation was so shoddy and shady in so many regards that he wasn't going to have enough to get that guilty verdict? Listen to District Attorney Rourke's own words in this rare interview.
I know this is hypothetical, but had Chris Watts not confessed in this case, how tight was this case? I mean, was there a lot of evidence out there? Because I know that as far as the murders, there wasn't a lot.
There was a lot of circumstantial evidence that really, I think, was strong evidence. When law enforcement shows up right at the outset, based on this call from her friend Nicole, saying, I need you to come check on the welfare of Shanann. When her car is there, her purse is there, her cell phone is there, the house is locked up from the inside in a way that no one could lock a door and run out a garage door, for example. The key code on the garage door didn't work. There was no way for a stranger to get in there, abduct them, or anything else. Signal to us that it probably, at that early stage, probably was a family member, probably was the defendant. But then you start to really look at the manner in which they were killed, where their bodies were dumped, his familiarity with that area. And I think there were a lot of pieces that could be put together even without him talking, but it certainly made it a much stronger case because he ultimately did give us at least a version of what he wanted us to believe, even though we know all of it wasn't the truth.
I'm following.
Stop asking about it. She didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't there that morning. She voluntarily cooperated with law enforcement. She provided us all the information. I'm not going to tell you where she's at. Stop. Leave me alone.
Within the same article in which District Attorney Rourke admits that he knows that the September 1st, 2017 search for Shanann Watts by Nichol Kessinger is not a typographical error, but rather it is in the discovery because it was found during the phone extraction review. In that same article, well, it says this: asked if the district attorney's office questioned or planned to question Kessinger about the data suggesting she was aware of Chris and Shanann Watts for up to a year before the murders, Rourke said that Chris Watts' guilty plea precluded any need for further probe of the results of the forensic analysis of Kessinger's phone. Quote, we did not get to the point in our investigation of attempting to independently verify that or not because Chris Watts pled guilty. From District Attorney Rourke. Wow. And then he goes on to say this investigation is closed. Huh. Wow. Wow. Our attention back to Nichol Kessinger. Remember, according to her, we are supposed to believe that, well, she deleted all of Chris Watts' texts and anything having to do with him on her phone because she just had found out the day after the murders that Shanann was pregnant, when that is virtually impossible. Huge lie, number one. I mean, there's a lot of huge lies, but for the sake of the purposes of this video, we're talking about a couple of them. And then she goes on to try to convince investigators on several occasions, from the very first of her 5 interviews with law enforcement to the very last of them, that her reason for coming forward in part was because, well, in whole, was because she was worried about Shanann and the girls. She was worried about what possibly could have happened to them. As I mentioned in the beginning, this video effort has been turned into 2 different parts. So before ending this first part, and well, I hope you watch the second part when it comes out in just a couple days, I want you to listen to just a few things that Nichol Kessinger said to Agent Kobach in her 3rd and final interview with law enforcement as it pertains to this case, because that's what we're going to be focusing on the next video. And what she herself says as we look at the entirety of the situation and wonder what Chris Watts' motive was, what the crime's motive was, and how it came about is really quite stunning.
Can you guys help me with the name change? You do that? I'm serious, please.
So I can't do anything for you. That's a legal process. It's really not that difficult. There's just paperwork that needs to be filled out. I think your best bet would just be to call and maybe ask an attorney to help you with that, or seek advice from, I don't even know who you'd call, honestly, but people change their name all the time when they get married. So it's probably the county clerk, but I would think it would have to be at a state level to make a name change. I know it can be done. I just don't know how to do it, and I wouldn't even know who to reach out. I mean, I could find out and let you know, but I don't know how to do it. Like the witness protection thing is very, very rare.
I'm not expecting that.
Yes.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not going to hurt you, all those things. So.
No, I'm not expecting that. I don't even know. Like, sometimes I'm like, I just want to do it now, and I'm like, why? See, she's all upset because I asked her to not talk to the media, and it happened to be the day that her dad died, and I'm sitting here trying to comfort her.
Okay.
But then she brought it up again last night, but she didn't.
Brought up what?
Okay, but she didn't, connect the dots. She was, freaking out, her dad just died. And she was really upset. She wanted me to come see her on Saturday because it's his week.
So unexpected?
Kind of, sort of. He had Parkinson's. So kind of, but not. You know what I'm saying? It was a very drawn out thing. But she's having a really hard time with it. I knew she would. And she's like, can you make the wake on Saturday? And I was like, I'm really hesitant to leave the house. And I didn't tell her that, but I was like, I don't know. I'll try. And I'm going to go, but I'm not going to tell her until it's right before I have to be there. And she.
So what is she reference of? Just Chris the guy? I'm more interested.
No, she didn't even ask me if she was just she's like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, you can see it.
Okay. So you mentioned on your text before you were coming that there was other information that you thought of that was important again?
Yeah.
More info?
Get so sidetracked.
I'll look at this when you do that, and then
I'll show you where it is.
Yeah,
There's so much in here. I'll just say.
You guys talk a lot.
Oh yeah.
Is this your best friend?
Yes. This girl is my whole world.
All right. But you're not talking about children or your relationship with Chris or anything like that?
No, the only time I ever mentioned him was that one day. Okay. And I didn't even remember that I even had said that to her.
What's her phone number?
And she apologized to me because she was being kind of crazy. She was.
So tell me about the new info that you remembered.
I don't care if your job is having an open investigation. I'm not going to ask you a single question, but my pops died and you're my best friend.
Okay.
I said, please stop talking about that. And she said, what do you want, house arrest? And she just keeps saying, my father died, what the fuck? She was not okay last night, and I was just trying to
understandable
mitigate this. And I was like trying to calm her down. And I said, Charlotte, I'm trying so hard to be the best friend I can to you right now. So I don't want to talk to you about that case. I didn't say the case. I said that case. Like I wasn't even affiliated with it at all. And you need to respect that. I'm here for you regarding your dad. You know this. And then she's
What's
freaking out. I'm freaking
you
out.
You guys never had a conversation except for this past text messages about Chris and his children.
No, that was it. Okay. So yeah, see, and she keeps trying to talk about it. She says, if you're not under investigation by the police, I don't care. Why can't you attend your so-called best friend's father's death? It doesn't make sense to me. And all I told her was stop.
And then
She just like,
her dad.
yeah, and she just is like,
Or welcome back to What's the Obsession. What are the biggest discrepancies, issues, and questions surrounding the Watts case? When it comes to the issues and questions, they come in a few forms. First of all, there are the literal discrepancies that we find within the documents that make up the 1,960-page discovery about the Watts case. There are issues of integrity in the investigation. Questions have come up like, why wasn't this person or that person questioned by the authorities? Or particularly in the case of Chris Watts' former mistress, why wasn't she pressed further for precise details when she was questioned by investigators? There are also questions about whether or not Chris Watts' confessed timeline is realistic or not. There are legitimate questions regarding whether or not the very details of Chris Watts' confession are possible given the evidence that law enforcement has collected, at least the evidence that we have access to. There are questions about the evidence itself. Why was some evidence collected, but it wasn't analyzed? And perhaps the biggest question is, did Chris Watts commit this crime on his own, or is there unfinished justice in the name of the victims, Shanann, Bella Celeste, and unborn baby Nico? Was anyone else involved in this horrific crime? Let's start by identifying the big question. Was anyone else with Chris Watts, or did anyone else help him out with this crime? Let's listen to a small portion of Chris Watts' interview with Tammy Lee and FBI Special Agent Graham Coder before he was arrested. This is when they're trying to break him down and get the truth out of him. It's just before his father, Ronnie Watts, comes into the interrogation or interview room to speak with him. And let's hear what Graham Coder and Tammy Lee are saying about what they think happened that awful morning.
Like, there's nothing, just because I
Right, people can be pushed to the point where they do something that they regret. It happens every single day.
I know.
But part of what makes you a man is the guy that goes, really fucked up, but this is what I did, and I'm gonna pay for what I did, and I'm gonna tell you what I did, and I'm gonna be honest about it.
Chris, we can keep talking to you once we find these girls, okay? Once we find these girls and your wife, right? No matter how we find them, no matter what condition they're in, we can keep talking to you and you can tell us, guys, it's not as bad as it looks. And you can say, let me tell you what happened. I was never comfortable with you, Graham, or with you, Tam. No, I wasn't comfortable yet, but now that everything's known, now that the girls are found and Shanann's found, however they're found, it's okay. We can keep talking to you. Okay?
Chris, did Shanann do something to them?
No, I don't know.
I'm serious.
I have no clue.
No, you would have known, because they didn't leave the house. Did Shanann do something to them, and then did you feel like you had to do something to Shanann?
They were at the house when I left. They were there.
They weren't there. They didn't leave. They vanished. The only way they could have left is in your truck.
There's no way, because like I didn't just throw them in my truck.
You know your truck has GPS,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because you even told your boss, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to separation, I'm maybe staying
Yeah.
at a friend's house, whatever. You know that thing pings every 10 seconds?
Yep.
So we will know
You can't turn it
exactly
off. I don't.
where you went.
And your company's giving that to us.
So there, you heard Colorado Bureau of Investigations Tammy Lee say it herself. She knows that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste left in Chris Watts' work truck. The investigators know that. There's really no other way they could have left unless they left through the back, which some people keep open as a possibility, and we really cannot rule it out since this case was not completely investigated. The question I have regarding the evidence that is presented in the discovery documents is if Tammy Lee and the investigators knew or felt they knew that the family left in Chris Watts' work truck, then why did they handle the evidence that was taken from Chris Watts' work truck in the way that they ultimately did? Let me explain. In the discovery, there's a detailed description of how each vehicle was handled, both Shanann's Lexus and Chris Watts' work truck, the Ford F-250. So we're particularly interested in this part under scene investigation and vehicles. It says on Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 at 1600 hours, myself and FSK Henson arrived at a certain location to process and execute a search warrant for the two vehicles which possibly had been used to transport the deceased victims in the case. So going down to the third paragraph, after a brief discussion, it was decided that CBI would photograph, collect, and package all evidence located. CBI would also use adhesive-based rollers and collect any possible hairs, fibers, and other trace evidence from the Ford truck in an attempt to determine any recent possible occupants of the vehicle. What I find to be of particular interest is the notation that the adhesive rollers collecting evidence, also known, guys, as trace lifts, was for the purpose of detecting any possible passengers or people that were transported in that vehicle. So, given that Tammy Lee herself told us and told Chris Watts that one thing she knew was that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were transported away from their house, 2825 Saratoga Trail, in his work truck, you would think that they would want to collect all evidence and analyze all possible evidence related to Chris Watts' work truck. Wouldn't you think?
The only way they could have left is in your truck. The only way they could have left is in your truck.
Nichol Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
Initially, you drew concern from me when you told me you deleted everything from Chris. I've already told you that. You understand why. There's no question as to why that might cause concern. So,
okay, my friend. So there you heard Tammy Lee telling Chris Watts that she knows that Bella, Celeste, and his wife Shanann left their home in his work truck, and they were missing at the time. He hadn't confessed at all yet. And then we have DA Rourke describing the information Nichol Kessinger gave law enforcement as being bombshell information. And then we have CBI's agent, Kevin Kobach, talking to Miss Kessinger and saying, initially you drew concern for me when you deleted all of your text messages between yourself and Chris Watts, and there's no question as to why that is. So what have we established? We have established that investigators know that Chris's missing family left the home in his work truck, that Miss Kessinger is a big part of this investigation, according to DA Rourke, bombshell information. And then we have the multiple interviews with Nichol Kessinger and Kevin Kobach, in which she repeatedly lies about why she deleted her messages, the text messages between herself and Chris Watts, and any information that relates to Chris Watts on her phone. Kobach comes straight out and tells her, "You're shady." Considering investigators know that Miss Kessinger knows so much that she has such an intimate and close relationship with Chris Watts right up until the day his family went missing, and they also know that she has been dishonest, that she destroyed evidence in this case, this triple plus homicide case. And these investigators, they don't really know what part she may have played leading up to, during the murders, or in the attempted cover-up of the murders. They also know that Chris Watts' work truck played a pivotal part in this crime. Don't you think they would want to know exactly who was in that truck, and particularly if Miss Kessinger was in that truck with Chris Watts? And even if they were going to protect her, even if they didn't care if Kessinger was in that truck with Chris Watts, don't you think that they would want to corroborate his confession and prove scientifically, with scientific evidence, that his confession was true, that the body of his deceased wife and his alive children were in the back of his work truck on that drive from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319? Wouldn't you think they would want to know that if they had the evidence right at their fingertips? There are many shortcomings from an investigative standpoint in this case that I and many others find shocking, but this one I always find to be among the most stunning of them all. Let me read you part of this supplement from the discovery. It should be noted that on September 4th, 2018, while running through the evidence submission list with lab tech Patricia Lopez, several items were listed that CBI Lab ultimately did not wish to take possession of at that time. Those items are crossed out on the evidence submission form, which has been added to the case file. The refused items are as follows. I'm going to read the last three items. Driver's side seat cover from work truck. Trace lift from center console of Chris Watts' work truck. And trace lift from back seat driver side of Chris Watts' work truck. The items that were not taken by CBI are transported back to the Frederick Police Department and into evidence. Further. So, my friends, what that means is the trace lifts that were taken from Chris Watts' work truck for the purpose of determining if any other occupants were in that truck. That evidence was actually collected. But CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, chose to not send that evidence to their labs to analyze the evidence, to determine what DNA could be found, what hair could be found, what other evidence, trace evidence could be found that would decisively identify what, if any, occupants were in Chris Watts' work truck, and they could also determine if those occupants were alive or deceased. Now, when I've brought this issue up before, people might refute it by saying, oh, well, maybe, well, hey, right there, it says they didn't wish to take it into evidence at that time, so maybe they analyze this evidence another time. But guys, we know that's not the case because District Attorney Rourke went with the story that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were all murdered in their home at 2825 Saratoga Trail until Tammy Lee, Dave Baumhover, and Graham Coder went to interview Chris Watts in prison after he was already serving his 5 consecutive life sentences on February 18th, 2018, over 3 months after his sentencing. At that time, Chris Watts then gave them a more complete confession, informing them of what apparently really happened, that Shanann's life was taken at the home, and that sweet little Bella and Celeste made that car ride from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319, 45 minutes, alive, with their mother's body on the floorboard beneath their feet. And it wasn't until they arrived at Survey 319 did they take their last breaths. People who were involved in law enforcement, and unanimously, they believe that this trace lift in DNA evidence would have determined if Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were in fact in that truck, if Nichol Kessinger or any other party was in fact in that truck, and if those occupants were in fact alive or deceased. So the question remains, why did CBI choose to not analyze this critical evidence that had already been collected?
I have all these things that I can't tell you.
We must remember how serious this crime and remember the victims. Rest in peace, sweet angels. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico.
Bella.